Look at the camel. To the modern eye, it is an ugly machine. It is lumpy. It is slow. It smells. It has knees that bend the wrong way. If you were a modern engineer or a management consultant, you would redesign it immediately. You would make it sleek. You would make it fast. You would shave off the weight. But the camel is the master of the desert. And we have a dangerous myth about this animal. Since we were children in school, our teachers told us the camel stores water in its hump. We look at that lump on its back and imagine a plastic tank inside, sloshing around with liquid. We think it is just a biological water bottle. This is a lie. The hump is not water. The hump is fat. It is 80 pounds of thick, heavy, solid fat. It is tristerin. It is biological fuel. It is a battery. A camel can walk for weeks without eating because it carries a backpack of energy. It carries 3 months of food directly on its spine. Now, I want you to think about the physics of this. Carrying fat is hard work. It takes energy to carry energy. It creates heat. It slows the animal down. It makes the camel heavy and awkward. In the short term, on a sunny day with plenty of grass, the hump is a burden. It is inefficient. It is wasted potential. Now, look at the racehorse. The racehorse is the god of efficiency. It has 0 body fat. Every ounce of muscle is built for kinetic energy. It carries no backpack. It carries no extra weight. It is optimized for one thing only: running fast on a perfect, flat, manicured track. The racehorse is beautiful. The racehorse is efficient. The racehorse uses every calorie for speed. But if you put that racehorse in the Sahara Desert, it dies in 3 days. The camel keeps walking. This is the trap. This is the mistake that almost destroyed my life, and it is likely destroying yours right now. For the last 40 years, the corporate world, the world I lived in for 35 years, worshipped the racehorse. We had a religion. The religion was called efficiency. I remember sitting in boardrooms in Kuala Lumpur and Singapore in the 1990s. We hired expensive consultants from the West. They looked at our factories with hungry eyes. They said, "Why do you have this extra inventory? It is a waste. It is sitting there doing nothing. Get rid of it." They looked at our bank accounts. They said, "Why do you have this idle cash? Cash is trash. Cash is lazy. Put it to work. Leverage it." We fell in love with a concept called just in time. We made the supply chains thin, tight, and fast. We laughed at redundancy. We called it fat. We cut the fat to boost the profits. We wanted to be racehorses. And then we took this corporate virus home to our families. Look at your own life today. You are trying to be a racehorse. You have optimized your finances to the bone. You read books that tell you to invest every single dollar. You feel guilty if you have $10,000 sitting in a savings account earning low interest. You think, "I am losing money to inflation. I must be efficient. I must get maximum returns." You live paycheck to paycheck, not because you are poor, but because you are optimized. You have tied up all your energy in a liquid assets or lifestyle costs. You have no slack. You have no buffer. You are crossing a financial desert with no hump. You see, efficiency only works when the weather is perfect. The racehorse wins on the track. But life is not a track. Life is a chaotic, unpredictable system. In nature, the environment changes. The rain stops. The winter comes. The predator attacks. In the economy, the market crashes. The virus hits. The company restructures. The layoff happens. The just-in-time life works perfectly, until the moment it doesn't. And when that moment comes, the efficient animal dies first, because it has no margin for error. We have forgotten the oldest rule of biology. Survival is not about being fast. Survival is about having redundancy. The fat on the camel is not a waste. It is insurance. It is the price of continuing to exist. You have spent your whole life trying to cut the fat, thinking you are being smart. But look at the horizon. The wind is changing. The drought is coming. And you are thirsty. For a long time, the strategy of the racehorse works. In economics, we call this the great moderation. It is the long summer. The interest rates are low. The jobs are plentiful. The stock market only goes up. In this environment, carrying a hump feels stupid. The person saving cash looks like a fool. The person leveraging debt looks like a genius. I saw this in the 1990s. I saw it again in 2007. I saw it in 2020. We convince ourselves that we have conquered nature. We think we have tamed the business cycle. We believe the water will always flow from the tap, so we discard our redundancy. We maximize our efficiency. We stretch our finances to the absolute limit to buy the bigger house, the faster car, the better stock portfolio. We are living at the very edge of our capacity. And then the weather changes. It always changes. That is the only law of the universe that matters. Entropy. Chaos. The black swan. Maybe it is a global pandemic. Maybe it is a war in a country you cannot find on a map. Maybe it is just your boss calling you into his office on a Tuesday afternoon to tell you your position has been made redundant. This is the moment of the crash. But the crash I am talking about is not just a stock chart falling. I am talking about the crash inside your life. When the drought hits the desert, the camel is calm. It stops eating. It slows down. Its body simply switches fuel sources. It begins to metabolize the fat in its hope. It creates water from the fat. It does not panic because it prepared for this day 5 months ago. But you are the racehorse. You have no fat. When the crisis hits, you have no buffer. And this triggers a biological chain reaction that destroys your wealth faster than any inflation ever could. First comes the cortisol spike. When you have no cash and the bills are due, your brain enters survival mode. You cannot think strategically. You cannot plan for next year. You can only think about today. You lose your IQ. You become reactive. This is where the trap snaps shut. Because you have no idle cash, you are forced to find money immediately. And because you are desperate, the market will punish you. You look at your investments. The stock market has crashed 30%. A rational person with a hump would leave that money alone. They would wait for the recovery. But you cannot wait. You need to pay the mortgage. So, you sell. You sell your assets at the bottom of the market. You turn a temporary paper loss into a permanent life-altering loss. You lock in your destruction. This is the biological equivalent of an animal eating its own muscle to survive. This is autophagy. You are consuming your own future to survive the present. And if you don't have assets to sell, you turn to the other predator. Bad debt. You swipe the credit card. You take the personal loan. You enter the world of 18% interest, 24% interest. When you had money, the bank offered you loans for 3%. Now that you are desperate, the price of money skyrockets. This is the irony of the financial desert. Water is free when it is raining, but water costs a fortune during a drought. I have watched brilliant careers end this way. I knew men who were masters of the universe when the market was high. They were efficient. They had millions in assets, but zero liquidity. When the storm came, they lost everything. They were forced to sell their homes, their stocks, their dignity, just to buy a few more weeks of survival. They were racehorses who broke a leg. The tragedy is that the inefficiency you hated, that boring pile of cash in the bank, was the only thing that could have saved you. You thought you were optimizing for wealth, but by removing the safety net, you are actually optimizing for fragility. You built a machine that breaks at the first bump in the road, and in a world full of bumps, that is a suicide mission. The crash leaves you with nothing, no savings, no assets. only debt and regret, and the storm is still raging. So, how do we survive the desert? How do we stop being fragile racehorses and start being antifragile camels? The answer is not to predict the future. We cannot predict the recession, the layoff, or the illness. The answer is to prepare for the unpredictability. We must build our hump. The corporate world calls this inefficiency. I want you to rename it. From today, we call it redundancy. Redundancy is not a dirty word. In engineering, redundancy is why planes have 4 engines, even though they can fly on one. In biology, redundancy is why you have 2 kidneys, even though you can live with one. Redundancy is the price you pay to not die. Here is the protocol. It is simple, it is boring, and it will save your life. Step 1. Calculate your survival weight. A camel does not guess how much fat it needs. It knows. You must know too. Calculate your lean burr rate. This is the bare minimum amount of money you need to keep a roof over your head and food on the table for 1 month. Multiply that number by 6. Why 6? Because in my 35 years of experience, I have learned that corporate winters usually last longer than you think. Finding a new job takes time. Recovering from an illness takes time. This 6 months of expenses, is your hump. It is your 35 kilograms of fat. Step 2. The air gap. This money must not be mingled with your daily spending. It must not be in the stock market. It must not be in crypto. Financial advisors hate this. They will tell you, but you are earning 0% real return. You are losing to inflation. Smile at them and ignore them. The purpose of the hump is not to make you rich. The purpose of the hump is to keep you alive. You are paying the inflation cost as an insurance premium. Put this money in a separate, boring bank account. Make it slightly hard to touch. It needs to be air-gapped from your impulses. Step 3. The power of no. This is the secret that no one tells you. When you have a hump, your psychology changes. You stop being a desperate animal. You stop radiating the smell of fear. When you have 6 months of expenses in the bank, you don't have to tolerate a toxic boss. You don't have to accept a bad deal because you are desperate for cash. You don't have to sell your stocks when the market crashes. You can wait. You can negotiate. You can say the most powerful word in the world. No. This is what Nassim Taleb calls few money. I prefer to call it freedom fuel. True wealth is not the number in your investment account. True wealth is your ability to sleep at night when the storm is howling outside. The racehorse runs fast, but it runs scared. The camel walks slow, but it walks free. We are living in a volatile world. The deserts are getting hotter. The storms are getting stronger. The supply chains are breaking. Do not optimize your life for the perfect day. Optimize your life for the worst day. Carry the weight. Build the redundancy. Be the camel. And when the drought comes, you will be the one who brings the water.